What's good, YouTube? Welcome back to another video made by me. And today I'm going to show you guys how to fix head gasket on an 01 Honda Civic. Let's go to the shop. Alright guys, we're out here in the shop, and you guys are probably thinking like, wow, this guy knows what he's doing, he knows how to change a head gasket. Nope, never did it. So, you guys are going to be learning with me along this video, so. I already took the initiative of taking the hood off. There's all the parts. I heard a gasket assembly replacement made by Felpro. First, gotta remove the battery. The reason we gotta remove the battery is so none of the electric wiring and stuff has power to it. That way we don't fuck anything up. Alright, now that we get the battery out, gotta remove these bolts. There's one here, one here, one here, one right there. And they're all 10 millimeters. Let's move this whole box out. And a little tip on how to not misplace your bolts. I like to screw them back spots where they have them, or I just left the bolts where they need to be. That way I don't misplace them and I don't have headaches afterwards. The next step that we're gonna do is move this top piece. Alright, so you take these two bolts off, as well as this breather port for your valve cover. And then there's a wire plug up here for your mass sensor. And it should just pop. There we go. Woo! So guys, now that this is off, make sure you don't lose your bolts. And then now, the next step is remove the power steering pump. Okay, and how we're going to take this part off is loosen this up a little bit with this 10 millimeter bolt. And there's, I think this is a 12 or 14 millimeter bolt. And then there's another bolt down there to loosen up as well. And the bolt's right, I know you guys can't see it, but it's down there. Kind of see it right behind that belt. So 1, 2, 3 bolts. This is 10, I think this is 12. And that looks like a 10 down there. Now loosen this belt off and move the power steering pump. As you can see, got the power steering pump out. So I'm gonna take this bracket off, 3 bolts, and they're all 14. That way it gives me more room for the alternator. Next, we're gonna do the alternator. Gotta take this plug, and then there's this bolt right here. I think this is a 14. And then there's another bolt down there they have to get to, and that one's, I believe, is a 14 as well. And then the alternator will come out with the belt. This bolt right here, I had to remove this plastic piece that was in the way of this belt. And with this belt, here's the bottom alternator bolt. It's kind of like the tensioner in a way. Just pretty much unscrew it and good to go. So got the bottom bolt out. Now up top, trying to get the top bolt out. As you can see, there's not enough room because you can see this bracket's a little bit in the way. So you're gonna want to remove this bracket. It's a 10 millimeter bolt. You just unscrew. That should give us enough clearance to take this alternator off. Got the alternator out. Now, air compressor. And then these are 10 millimeters. You want to take these off. You just wiggle off. Pretty easy. Put that over there. Another one right here. Wiggle, wiggle. Wiggle, 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 wiggle. Move that out the way. So, 1 bolt. 2 bolt, and then right underneath this one there's 1, 2, so technically 4 bolts. I believe they're 12. And the air compressor will be out. Took this bracket off that was connected to the alternator. That was a 12 or 14 millimeter bolt. Our next step, take this bracket off, start taking this whole wire harness off from the spark plugs. That's the next step. Okay, so as you can see, got that bolt off, got all the wire harness off. There was a bracket back here. You just take like a, oh, you can't really see it, but there's a bracket back here that was stuck to, and you just stick like a pick tool, pick it in there, wiggle it around, and it should pop off. There's there's like a plug down there for the crank position sensor, and then the cam position sensor. Remove those. This just comes right off. A couple brackets. Took this stuff off. Now this whole wire harness is off. The next step I'm gonna do is remove these, and then remove this bracket back here. 2 bolts. Pretty much remove these 2 bolts. And then with the valve cover with these 5 bolts. They're all 10 millimeter. Most of these bolts right now, they're about 10 to 12 to 14 millimeter. Alright guys, just got done taking the head or valve cover off. And I kind of got a little bit ahead of myself. I put it back on so no debris gets in it. You don't really want debris in it. But I'm gonna take off this fuel rail, and it looks like there's one. Let me get up in this bitch. And the second one's right underneath here. I apologize for all the camera shaking. My camera guy wasn't able to help me out with this, so I'm kind of doing this solo. Take this fuel rail off, and then go from there. Alright guys, next step is to with the exhaust manifold. 2 bolts right here, 12 millimeters. And then there's 1, 2, 3 bolts. And that's about it. And then the exhaust is off. This right here, garbage. What we're gonna do now is drain the radiator fluid. That way there's no radiator fluid, because we have to take these hoses off. We don't want a mess, you know. Keep things nice and clean. So how do we do that? Well, good question. This guy right here. This plastic thing, you just turn it, you know, righty tighty, lefty loosely. Here we go. Yep, there she pees. Alright guys, just got done draining the radiator. Took care of the top radiator hose. Took care of the bottom radiator hose, where it chokes up to there. And I also took the liberty of taking these side hoses off. Where's the other one? Oh, yep. So they're hooked up like that. Took the clamps out. Boop, boop. Took some more. The wire harness off. And now my next step is to get the fuel rail off and start with the throttle body and the intake. Okay guys, as you can see, I took my throttle body off, cleaned that shit up. I didn't really feel like showing you guys taking off the throttle body because it's 4 bolts. As you can see, when you take this apart, this actually comes in 2. This is hooked up to it, bolted on, whatever, and then it comes off. So what we're gonna do is lower the engine so we can get more room for the harmonic balancer. In order to do that, I gotta get a jack and a piece of wood and put underneath the oil pan and lift it up. I'm gonna take these 3 bolts off and then lower the engine. And you can either use a 19 millimeter or a 3/4 or 3/4 inch fit that. And you wanna lower it down because we're gonna put everything at top dead center. Can't really see from up here, but there's a marking top of the harmonic balancer that lines up with a line. Then there's an up here, and there's these little notches. You can kind of see right there, and it has to line up with that, with the arrow pointing up. Now, about to remove the harmonic balancer. And before I did that, what I did was the timing belt. I marked the timing belt on the timing belt and on the cam. Alright, just that's what Honda recommended. That's what my service book said. Make sure everything was top dead center. Time to remove that bolt. Hopefully, I can get this guy out without using a special Honda tool for this guy. But we will see. Let's do this. Thank God! So you know, this bolt is gonna be the hardest bolt you're gonna remove. If you haven't removed this before, which I have because I did my time belt before, so that's why it came off pretty fucking easy. But this is gonna be the bolt that's gonna be the battle of your life, man. Prepare to remove the harmonic balancer. There's a key in here that you need to make sure that is there. That right there, you don't want to lose that. We in this bitch. Now the next step, my next step is to remove this belt. Some people say to remove the cam gear, but I might just let the machine shop do it. But it's time to remove the belt. There's a belt tensioner right there, right where my flashlight's hitting. That. There's should be a spot that you can put a wrench on and you can move it and it should loosen up the belt. Time belt off. And I know I said that there's like a spot that you can put like your wrench, whatever, and it comes off, but I couldn't really find a good spot. So what I did was I just took the spring off. The spring's, you know, right there. I just took it off and it was that orange looking thing. But I just took the spring off and that's what kind of helped shimmy it off. I kind of didn't take the crank position sensor off. So I just left the belt on there so it's not really moved. If you guys don't know much about engines, everything must be consistent. That's how an engine is really run up, based off consistency. So that's why I put the marks on the camshaft. We gotta take the spark plugs off. Take the spark plugs out. And then move the head bolts. And you need to remove the head bolts in this fashion. So this is where the camshaft is, or not camshaft, cam gear. The reason for that is you gotta do it in this specific way so the head doesn't warp. If the head warps too much, you're screwed. Need a new one. Okay, another thing I wanna add is when you remove the bolts in that specific pattern, alright, you wanna do it 1/4 to 1/3 of the turn at a time. You don't wanna just undo the whole bolt and then have the rest of them still be tight because that's still gonna warp the head. And the size of bolt is 14 millimeters. Alright guys, got the head off. Little tidbit of information. I forgot to remove this guy. So I was having such a hard time. But yeah, don't forget to remove this guy from the head. Everything looks nice. Just gotta clean it up a little bit. And now for the head, gotta remove this cooling stuff right here. VTEC solenoid. Okay guys, now I got that section off and the VTEC solenoid off. Now it's time to go to the machine shop. Alright, now that I got all the parts all cleaned up, now I'm gonna start putting them back together. I think this is a EGR valve, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm wrong, correct me in the comments. But you would want to get a new gasket for this because it kind of melts itself into there. And when I use the clean the parts, I know there's better ways. This is the way I did it. Use brake parts cleaning a brass brush. That's just the way I cleaned them. I know there's much better ways, so whatever way you prefer to clean your parts, and clean them. Next step is getting the old gasket stuff off. You want all this black shit off the metal. Alright guys, as you can see, black, it's all cleaned off. Top is the 3 things that I use is this gasket remover with plastic scraper and a really good wire brush. You don't want these brushes to break off when you're trying to clean it, so make sure to get a really good brush. And on a side note, you can see the inner tie rods. I replaced those. Literally the only way to get to the inner tie rod is either do a head gasket installation or take your intake manifold off. I mean, this is really long. There is no tool, there's no inner tie rod tool that's long enough to fix that. So what I did was, you can see how it's like a bolt back, not like a bolt, but there's like a place where you can put a wrench. And I got 1 1/8 or 29 millimeter wrench. You just go over there and just, righty tighty lefty loosey, and they come off. And take note how clean the block is. You want this and this part as clean as possible. Everything off. Everything must come off. When you guys do this, make sure you take your time. Like, literally take your time. You don't want to, use a razor blade, fuck something up. The only 3 materials I used was those 3. Another thing, make sure to plug all your oil ports and all the bolts and coolant, everything. Block everything off so no dust or particles can get in there. And now for my next step, I'm gonna be putting the head back on. I'm a little bit nervous because I never done this before. Hey guys, that's what the new head gasket looks like. And you got like these metal dowels go on the bottom ones. And there's only one way to put this head gasket on. And when you put the head on, make sure to use these guide pins or these dowels so you can just slightly the head down. Alright, let's do this. Alright, now I got the head on. If you have a partner or someone that could help you, it would probably be really beneficial. It's not like it's too terribly tough by yourself, but it would be nice to have somebody else there to help out. But I got 10 brand new head bolts. They're genuine Honda, but I got them from Advanced Auto and they're half the cost. So what you do is light oil, very thin oil here, and on the washer and the head. About like the head, a little bit of oil here, a little bit of oil there, a little bit, like very thin, because if this is dripping of oil and you go to put it in the threads, where the thread goes, creates like a hydraulic, because liquid can't compress. So you can either A, strip your bolts, B, go straight through the block, or C, break a bolt. And you gotta start in this sequence of putting the bolts in with 14 foot-pounds for the first torque spec, 36 foot-pounds for the second one, and the third one's 49 in this sequence. I hand tightened them all, and not only that, before I put the bolts in, I shot compressed air in there so all the debris gets out of there. And you don't want to just torque each one to 14 pounds right away. You want to just lightly turn them all a little each time, so the head gasket and everything just kind of squishes all evenly. Alright guys, got my head bolts on, and it wasn't that bad. Thought it was going to be a lot worse, but it really wasn't that bad. Take your time with it. I just took my time with it and everything went perfect. Now my next step is to put a new timing belt on. I was gonna reuse my old timing belt, but since I didn't have a bottom timing cover and I drove it through all the winter, a couple of my buddies said you might as well replace it because it's not really shot, but it's worn out. So I just went ahead and bought myself a new belt. 30 bucks, it wasn't that bad. I mean, off brand was like 20 bucks, so I bought a Gates for 10 more bucks. So what you want to do is make sure that crank is at top dead center. There's a marking there that I can't really get with it with the camera, but there is a mark, like an arrow down there, and it tells you if it's top dead center, as well as there's little notches, you know, it tells you top dead center, or you can have the machine shop tell you to put it at top dead center. But you start with the crank, wire up through the belt tensioner, around the water pump, and then around the cam, and boom, done. Just make sure everything's at top dead center, or you will need a new engine after this. Gonna put the new timing belt on. I already put this plate on, 4 bolts, pretty simple. And then I'm also gonna put the VTEC, which is 3 bolts. Put the VTEC on, the side plate on, which is like 4 bolts. It's for the gas thing, whatever it's called, and then the radiator housing stuff. Okay guys, got my belt on and I'll show you what I did. Since it's really hard to get a good look in the engine bay, this is kind of the side view. This is the camshaft, water pump, belt tensioner, and the crank pulley or crank gear, whatever you want to call it. And how you put the belt on is you start the cam gear and you work yourself around the pulley, around the water pump, and then you kind of put the belt snugly on the cam gear, and then this spring is gonna not be attached to where it's supposed to be. Once you have the belt on, you attach it. Make sure that these marks are on top dead center. There's an up arrow, and there's 2 marks on the cam gear, and there's a mark right here on the crank gear. And what you want to do is rotate it this way, all right, on the crank. Do it twice, all right, and then the second time, make sure everything is on the mark. And when everything's on the mark, that means that it is timed right. And if they're off a little bit, you're gonna have to redo the process to make sure your car is timed. If you don't do this process right, you will fuck up the motor, or you will mess up the motor. Pretty much, can you see it? Yeah. So there's gonna be a piston connected, whatever. There's gonna be some valves. If it's not timed right, your pistons can meet your valves, and that will not be good at all. My next step is to put the motor mount back on. When you put the motor mount back on, make sure these 2 side bolts are connected, because you're not going to be able to fit them when you put them in. So you put it in like this, right? Just like that. And there's 3 bolts on that side. And then after that, I'm going to be putting my timing cover back on, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts. Make sure that the bolt with the longest shoulder, this one, goes on the top. And that top part meets with your top timing cover like that. So everything looks like that with the motor mount that way. Okay guys, as you can see, I got the timing cover on, top timing cover on, and the bottom timing cover on. And once you get that, all you gotta do is put the harmonic balancer on, but make sure the key's there, and then tighten up this bolt. Just take an impact, just done. Alright, now the next part is putting the exhaust back on. Since there's nothing in here, you're just gonna easily put this on. Sorry for the shaky camera, I forgot my tripod today. But first, you put this guy on like that, wiggle it on like so. Make sure that everything lines up, and then you just easily. Now, if you have your heat shield, like I still have mine, so the top 2 bolts, you don't want to put them in until you put your heat shield on. Alright, got my heat shield on, and yes, I did paint it. Thank you very much. Now I went over here, put one of the other radiator hoses on, hooks up to the heater core line, and this one hooks up right by the throttle body. So put the AC compressor on. There's only 4 bolts, and they're 12 millimeters each. 4 bolts, 12 millimeter each. And these ones, I believe, are 10s. These are the ones that hook up to your AC hoses. But this is gonna mount up to try to get some light. There's 4 holes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now it's time to put this guy on. Just like that. Put the nut on. And then what we're gonna do is hook this guy up. I'm gonna need 2 hands for this guy. Okay, now what I'm gonna do is put the other hose on here, which same thing as what you did before. Just hook it up there, boop, take the nut off, boop, screw it on, done ski. Now what I'm gonna do is mount this bracket, 3 bolts, 14 millimeter. And it goes right here. 1, 2, 3. Okay, what I did here, guys, was first put this top bolt in. Yeah, you can't really see it with this bracket, but put this top bolt in, hand tighten it so it's kind of loose. And then for this bracket, I just hand tightened this bolt so it's kind of loose. And then I just try to match the tensioner right here. And then I tightened everything else up. Took a breaker bar in there. Had somebody else push on it. And then I tightened that bolt. Now I'm going to put the intake on. First one, I'm going to unscrew these bolts. Okay, so as you can see, the intake is 2 parts. That plastic part and the metal part. There's some gaskets in there that you'll need to replace. Those blue lines. You'll know when you take it apart. But just hook up those 3 bolts. Shit. 1, 2, and 3 down there. And the 3 bolts you'll need to hook up is 1, 2, and 3. And then the 3 bolts down there. And the gasket can only go one way, which is this way. Just like this. Boop. And then I'll just wiggle on the intake. Oh, and yeah, yes, that is a red hose. Thank you for noticing. I know. It looks very nice. Okay, I got the intake on. Got these 2 hoses. This one. Whoop. And this one's kind of like right by. Somewhere's over there. Anyways, hooks up right there. There's another hose in the back. You hook up to. Hook up this red hose to the PCV valve. Then put this plate on 12 millimeter. And put this plate on 10 millimeter. Yeah, and also these are 12 millimeters. And now it's time to put the power steering pump back on. Okay, here's what I did. There's a bracket for this reservoir. You put that on first. Alright. Then you kind of put that guy on, that bolt on. There's another bolt on here. Put the belt on and literally tighten that bolt up. I hand tighten this guy as much as I could, and the belt's kind of taut. And then I really twisted on these bolts. Now for my next trick, I'm gonna put the injectors in. The secret to putting the injectors in really well is to like lube the rings with a little bit of oil, just so they just kind of pop right in. As you can see, I put the fuel rail on. It wasn't really hard. 10 millimeter bolts right here, and there's one underneath here. And then I put the fuel rail on, another 10 millimeter bolt. For my next trick, I'm gonna put my valve cover on. Since I'm already this far, my kit came with a valve cover gasket and some spark plug seals. Now, the spark plug seals should be facing this way. Believe. Yes, that's right. Yep. Yep. Okay. Have these like this little lip pointing your way, and you either take a socket big enough to push them in, or you take a socket like what I did, just gently push them in all the way around. And then we put it on. Now Honda recommends putting a little bit of Honda Bond or a gasket maker on these corners. Just a little bit, not much. Alright guys, these are 10 millimeters. Take an 1/8 inch driver or a ratchet like this and literally hand tighten them until they're tight by hand. Now, I'm gonna put the wire harness back on. It's pretty simple, alright? Wherever it lies is kind of where it goes. You know, it's simple. Alright guys, real quick. I just folded the wire harness over, alright? Hooked all this shit up. Well, first what I did was I moved this out of the way so I could get this wire harness on. Hooked this up, hooked that up, and then I put these plugs in, hooked these up. I haven't hooked the alternator one up yet, but you just put the plug in, take the 10 millimeter bolt, screw it in, and went over here. This hooks up to your part of your intake. Alright, so then hooked up all the camshaft sensor, crank sensor, all the fuel injectors, all this, that, VTEC. Smaller cable, the shorter cable goes on the bottom one, which is a 12 millimeter bolt to tighten, and the longer one goes on the top, which is also 12 millimeter to tighten. And now, put the intake back on. Slowly work our way. Okay guys, hold up. Alright, what I did was, I put this hose on first and then put this section on. Tighten this up, boom, boom. Plug this guy in, click. Put this section on, wiggled it in. Screw that on, screw that on. Screwed that guy on, and that guy on. And then I put this section in, screwed that guy on, and that guy over here. They're all 10 millimeters. They're all 10 millimeters. But only thing left to do is fill the radiator and change the oil. The reason why I'm gonna change the oil because there could have been some crap or some debris that would have went in the oil. And I don't want to get all through all the clean parts of it, so I'm just gonna dump the oil. And if you guys don't know how to change oil, I actually made a video on how to change oil. It was my last video, but I'm gonna put it in the description below. Also, what you're gonna want to do is bleed the radiator. All right, guys, got the oil put in. Got my antifreeze in there, still bubbling. But we're gonna turn the car on now. This is the moment of truth. I almost don't want to start it.
How do you feel?
Feels amazing. Okay, guys, I drove 252.7 miles since put the new head gasket in. Let's see how it starts up. Beautifully. If you guys got all the way to the end of the video, I just want to say thank you, and I really appreciate all the love and support you guys give me. It really means a lot to me. And you know, I really learned a lot from doing this. I never did this before up until this point, but now that I did it, I kind of have a new form of knowledge, and it's kind of amazing. It makes me, you know, feel like what I'm doing is actually, you know, what I really want to do. And it is a lot of fun. It is what you make of it. If you're gonna sit there and, you know, be scared about it, well, it's gonna be very scary. But if you just take it on as a challenge and keep growing, well, that's what it's gonna be. And it's truly amazing to be able to do the work myself with the help of YouTube, Google, and other people that I've called here and there for advice. And car's gonna last another 180,000 miles. So with that being said, it's not tomorrow, it's not Friday, it's not next month where you need to start to be great. Today is what you need to do to become great. Because you don't have to be great to start, you gotta start to be great. And it has to be today. Today must happen. Peace out, guys.